Hey, rookies, and welcome back to the Rookie Farmer Podcast, the home of the dreamers, the schemers, and the hustlers here in the world of small scale agriculture. I'm your host, Alec Smith. I am the farmer here at Crop Culture Farm in New Bern, Georgia. All right, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the interview that everyone's been waiting for, the one that you wanted, even if you didn't know that you wanted it. We sit down with the ever powerful, ever knowledgeable, all wise Diego Footer of Modern Grower. It was a super fun episode to get to do. I wanted to have an episode where we could highlight and talk about the importance of tools in the market garden. And who better to talk to than Diego of Modern Grower, who's making all this happen anyways. And so it was a real treat to sit down and talk with Diego. We discussed the importance of investing in good tools and why, if we're willing to ask customers to pay a premium for product, why we're not willing to pay for them ourselves. We also discussed some new products that are now out from Modern Grower and some of the classics that they've been selling for years. We also get a little bit of a background on how Diego got to where he is today. And so there's so much more. This is a really fun interview. I love getting to talk with Diego whenever I get a chance to. So get ready for the Diego Footer interview. The tables are being turned. I'm interviewing him, and we'll sit down and talk to Diego Footer of Modern Grower. All right. We have a really special interview today. We're sort of turning the tables a little bit. A lot of you guys who jumped on from Farm Startup last year on Farm Small, Farm Smart, you heard Diego ask me a lot of questions, but today we get to turn things around and I get to talk to Diego. So welcome, Diego Footer.
Yeah, thanks. And this is a unique perspective to be in because I've been on podcasts before, but I don't think I've been on a podcast where I've interviewed someone, let alone
Mm,
someone as much as I've interviewed you. So I enjoy being on the other side. I wish I was more.
yeah, for sure. And I kind of guess we'll just jump right into things. With sort of doing things a little different, I know we've heard a good bit about your desire with permaculture and starting Permaculture Voices and then kind of how that snowballed into whatever you're doing now. But I don't know if I've ever actually gotten sort of the background, sort of behind the scenes story of like who you are and kind of what brought you to the point of starting Permaculture Voices and then going on to start the podcast and then Modern Growers. So can you kind of give us a little bit of a background into who you are?
Yeah, if we go in the early entrepreneurial days, in 2003, I graduated with my master's in finance, worked at a brokerage financial investment company from 2003 till, I'm getting fuzzy on this, maybe 2015, 16, somewhere in there, maybe 17. So quite a while, dealt a lot with high net worth individuals investing in stocks and private equity. So I did a lot of that. And that was really where my passion was coming out of college. I was super into that. If you would have asked me what I wanted to do in life, it was that. I was all about the stock market, read books on it, lived, breathed it. The place I worked for quickly shut down a lot of
Mm,
dreams I had around that because they had a way of doing things that didn't align with how I wanted to do things. So when you get into investing, yeah, that's like a giant umbrella, and there are many ways to invest now with AI. I mean, there's straight algorithms that people invest in, there's technical analysis, there's deep fundamentals, there's value investing. So there's all these swaths, and they were like they say value investing, they weren't. But they had like their own philosophy on how you invest. And if you didn't do it that way, it was basically wrong. And the way I was really interested in was more the technical analysis side. They thought that was like made up, didn't work. So they tried to beat that out of me. And I became less enthused about that business, yet wrote it out. Because in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, the money was really good. I graduated college as an engineer, and I was making way more money doing that than I ever could have at that age. Then 2008 hit, And that's when, for people that aren't too familiar, that's when the mortgage bubble imploded and took the stock market with it, starting off the Great Recession. And there was market stoppages, meaning the market was going down so fast, so quickly, that there's actually fail-safe triggers to stop the market to prevent total crashes. And that was happening. I had people that were clients like calling literally from everything from crying
Wow.
to, screaming at you through the phone because hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars were lost in half an hour. I mean,
Mhm.
those drops were pretty quick at the time. And I realized, okay, I gotta start changing a few things around life. I need to consider myself. What could I do? And I always looked into, well, maybe I could trade on my own and just be self-employed as a day trader. And that never really came about. I'm not totally sure why in hindsight. But I started getting, like, a little bit of that entrepreneurial bug. At the same time, through a lot of reading, I was starting to be exposed to just changing eating habits. That was a natural vector into starting my own garden and growing, which then led me into, well, if you're gonna garden, why not garden the best way possible? And that was all sorts of research into that. So I had these 2 flames ignited in me pretty much simultaneously of entrepreneurship and gardening. And so I started thinking, all right, I'd like to do a business. Like, what could I do? Looking for opportunity. And I was so closely focused on gardening that that's naturally where I was seeing a lot of the opportunity. And that's where I was spending most of my time looking. If you're looking at the ground in a 4 foot by 4 foot square, you're going to notice a lot in that square and not notice so much on the periphery. So I was so focused on there, I started kind of trying to find opportunity. And, I tried a couple businesses along the way, did some drop shipping of composting equipment, and it was technically a business, but it wasn't a business that generated really any revenue. Got involved with some websites I was trying to start. Nothing really took traction. Then that got me involved with the rare fruit growers in California, which connected me ultimately to Paul Wheaton, had
Mhm.
him out to do a talk about permaculture for one of the rare fruit grower meetings. That turned into a workshop. Talking to him, I kind of got this idea of like, why are all these permaculture events very local, very regional? Well, this is cool. There's people around the world that are famous doing this type of stuff. Why can't we do a massive one? And it was like Woodstock type thing,
Mhm.
um, which maybe has too many bad parallels for a business or a movement. And did that. That went okay. I mean, as a business, it was probably, it was a roller coaster ride financially and emotionally. Probably came out even at the end of it, maybe lost money. Honestly, try and black a lot of that out, um, unintentionally. It's just very hard in
Yeah.
life. But I learned a ton. That was my school into entrepreneurship. I made a lot of w other gains, the other forms of capital out there. I gained experiential capital, made a ton of social capital, connections. A lot of the people I talk to today, work with today, all came out of that event.
Mhm.
So if I gained anything, I gained some friends, I gained relationships, and then I took that from kind of a pile of ashes, if you will. Well, hey, the building burned down, but there's still some usable nails and stuff. Let's use these nails to construct a new building. So I started the podcast back then, The Urban Farmer, which is relaunched now for its 10-year anniversary, just to give people a timestamp on things, on where we are in the story with Curtis. In doing that, we started talking about the paper pod transplanter. And then I started looking at it like, man, that's such a cool invention. Why aren't more farmers using it? I think it would really help. Curtis seemed into the idea. And I said, okay, well, there's somebody selling it here in the US, but they're doing a really honestly bad job selling it. It's a nice guy, but he's just not a marketer. I think we can just do a better job of selling this. And most farmers probably have that. You walk around a local farmer's market and you can see who's maybe more experienced in selling and who's just showing up. And I think he was kind of showing up and we're going at it with actual strategy. Ended up importing some and it just took off, got some luck along the way. One of those back then, there was like all these like Business Insider and stuff that would take
Yeah.
clips and like try and make them go viral. And it did. Like one of the clips of the equipment had like seriously like a billion views on some of these things. And that catapulted it. And we really launched into that space with a fury. And then from there on, have just grown the company, evolved the company ever since. Along the way, I Curtis left the company and I took full control of it because he just wanted to go in a different direction with his life. And that brings us where we are today. What was Paper Pot Co. is now Modern Grower. And that's my entrepreneurial journey in 5 minutes.
Yeah, nice. That's really, really nice and concise. Before we jump into paper pot, you kind of referenced doing like the Woodstock of permaculture. Would you say permaculture voices was more original Woodstock or Woodstock 99 in hindsight?
It's funny. Well, no, it wasn't Woodstock 99.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, there was none of that activity happening. There was an event in like the 80s that was a big concert out in California. I think it had more people than Woodstock. I'm blanking at the name of it, but it had all the huge bands of like the 80s in it. And I think there was like 250,000 to 500,000 people there in San Bernardino. And I had kind of read about that event. And that's always kind of what I pictured. And ironically, that event did not succeed financially. It was kind of like a headline success when you looked at who
Yeah.
was there, but not financial. And that always was kind of like a omen to me.
Mm,
So it was tough as a business. The business model was tough because to get to get a conference to work, you need a lot of people willing to pay the price you need them to pay to get in, and you really need sponsorship. And I had trouble getting enough people to pay what I needed them to pay and getting sponsorship from companies that could offset some of the hard costs. So from that sense, that was where the challenge was from if you just looked at the Woodstock album,
yeah.
and we also skipped Woodstock 94, which I think
Oh, okay.
is, I mean, that's my kind of my generation of like
Gotcha. Yeah,
better,
that
I
one
mean,
slipped my
nice
mind. I was
hybrid.
1 years old, so I wasn't in attendance.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Better Metallica than Woodstock 99, Nine
Yeah.
Inch Nails, Green Day, Cypress Hill, pretty awesome. So the headline, like the people that were there was Woodstock. The album cover was awesome.
Hmm.
The behind the community of people that went awesome. Like the people that went and supported the event and supported me and all of the ones I did, I will be forever grateful to. I have nothing bad to say about any of them. So many people went above and beyond to help me out at a time like especially after the second one where I was really hurting financially. A lot of people, just basically gave me extra money to help out. So the community part of it there, the headline part of it was there, and it matched any Woodstock or big name event or whatever Stagecoach for things like People Now or Coachella.
Hmm.
We don't even know what Woodstock is,
Yeah.
but the business I don't know what the business model of Woodstock was, but the business was what was challenged with that event.
Hmm. Well, and I think a cool thing about sort of your entrepreneurial evolution is it really is like a perfect picture of just sort of the way culture and media and education has changed. Because I think at that time, I mean, I can remember conferences I went to for lots of different things. I was in kind of specialty coffee at the time, and the Specialty Coffee Association of America conferences were like huge, massive, huge things, and even some farm conferences were really big. And I feel like that was sort of the heyday of like the conference time. Everything was behind the quote unquote paywall. It's like, if you wanted the information, if you wanted the knowledge, like you had to get there, butt in a seat to hear these people. And if you wanted to connect with new companies that were selling all these things, even though you could find them online, like you really kind of needed to have that face to face, but uh, kind of, yeah, in the late teens, then obviously leading up, and then with COVID, all of that completely stopped. And suddenly with Zoom and podcasts and YouTube just exploded. And so, yeah, I find it really, really cool that you were able to sort of adapt and change, and in some ways kind of become a leader in that, at least kind of in the ag space. Like, you know, there was guys like Chris Blanchard, Farmer to Farmer, and stuff like that. But there wasn't a ton of like farm content out there, especially free stuff that was online geared towards farmers, a lot of gardening stuff, but nothing for market gardeners. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just a cool observation to see how you've been able to kind of change with the times. Um, when ultimately coming into like time of the pandemic where all that would it'd been completely shut down, and I would argue is probably never going to um kind of bounce back to where it was previously.
That's probably right. Yeah, I think it's definitely
Mhm,
a different business today. Don't get me wrong. I think there's value in being learning in person, but there's
yeah.
also more content than ever online.
Mhm.
I think now if you do an event like that, there's definitely an online component to it, like you live stream it type thing. Uh,
Yeah, just about every conference that I could have attended or whatever, most of them have some sort of like, yeah, you pay for like online access, and then you can essentially be there without being there. And so like, well, then why have the convention center? Why do that? Why not just do like like an online symposium sort of thing, which that's happening too.
yeah, that being said, I mean, I know somebody from Acres, and I think they had their highest attendance ever at the 2024 Acres event in
Oh,
December, which I think was in Kentucky, maybe. But so that's I mean, there's still a vibrant thing. People will travel for it. It's gotta make sense, and you have to evolve. I mean, that's the big takeaway here. I know whether you're a farm business, an orange juice business, a
mhm,
conference business. I remember at the time I wrote a lot about it, talked a lot about it on some of the podcasts. I described my life as like I'm on a ship. I'm like I have a ship that's been battered by a hurricane, and I'm trying to build something new from the debris of the
mhm,
ship while the ship's being tossed around. So it's like, how do we dismantle this thing that's worth something? And the sea is chaotic, yet we got to come out something else. Because at that same time, I ended up the job I had, I kind of phased myself out of it. So I was forced to then say, all right, I didn't want to do basically work for that company anymore. The person I worked for left. And so I had this thing of like that event had wrapped up. Uh, the Great Recession was still in play. So I had real quiet years. All the money I was making early on in that field, now I was making not very much at all, like sub $50,000 a year. So it was a massive swing. And I needed to do something entrepreneurial that was going to pay bills. And at that time when I left the job, I really didn't know what that was. It was like, well, do I write a book? Is something around the podcast? What's that going to look like? And I had to figure that out. And Paper Podco
mhm,
was not in the plan. And that ended up becoming the plan.
yeah. So with that, um, looking back now, what year did you start Paper Pot Co?
2017, we launched in July.
Okay. So from July 2017, because, I'll just take myself as, probably your median person, hadn't heard of the paper pot, didn't know anything about it, came out of nowhere. I'm hearing about it on your podcast, on Curtis's YouTube, so on and so forth. So from July 2017 until now, um, how do you think the paper pot has really changed the game for market farming?
It's opened up a lot of possibility for people. I mean, I'll say it right up front, it's not a fit for every farm. It's not gonna be a game changer for every farm. But for farms that had farmers that had some sort of physical issue where
Mhm.
hand transplanting was hard for whatever reason, that was a solution. For farms that had limited labor, 1, 2-person farm, that's been helpful to do it. For farms that are labor abundant, for farms that have able-bodied people, for farms that, just prefer hand transplanting or have to plant into weed fabric or something like that, it hasn't mattered. I'd say it's a it's not a tool if you're starting a market farm and you ask me, what are the tools you must have? It's
Mhm.
not on the must-have list. It's maybe not in the second tier unless you are just a one-person side hustle and you are extremely limited in time, but it's in the top third. It's not like a, I don't know, a pinpoint seeder that has a very unique use case. It's closer to the top of something more critical, but it's gotta fit the case, and that's every tool,
Mhm.
including stuff that you'd buy at Home Depot to put in your garage to use to do repairs. Nothing's gonna be a miracle cure, and I think some people think it gets marketed like that, and I've seen a lot of it over the years of like, "Hey, it's promises to be this much," and it's not. It fits a unique role in a unique farm for somebody looking to try and get a desired effect. For those people and the people that can embrace it and get over the learning curve and adapt their system to it, then it's a game changer. For people that don't want to adapt to it, for people that don't wanna put in the time, for people it's not a right fit for, it's a disaster.
Mm.
It's a waste of money. So but that's anything.
Yeah, and I will say, if the paper pod is sort of 3rd tier, I would argue, and I'd be curious what you thought, kinda where you would put something like, the Jang Cedar. We'll just stick with JP1, kind of I would consider that a huge game changer, top tier. If you have the capital and you can afford to invest in that above, before you get an Earthway or anything else, that would definitely be that top tier game changer for me because I know, for speaking from experience, going from, I can remember the last bed that I planted by hand, making a furrow and just dropping seeds in was a bed of radishes, and then the bed right next to it planted arugula with the jang the next day, and it was just, I mean, it totally changed everything, and there's no way that we would be able to be operating at any sort of scale like we are now with that, and so, yeah, I would definitely put the jang in that top tier category.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could say a direct seeder, right,
Mhm.
is really the answer.
Yeah.
You could say Earthway, although not as versatile. And really the Jang is $300 more. Like, if you're starting a farm, you're trying to tell me like $300, you
Mhm.
don't have that much in the US difference. Like, just get the one that you're gonna ultimately want that'll last forever. But
Mhm.
you are not hand seeding. I mean, that's a commercial dry cleaning versus Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's mom washing out of a bucket
Yeah.
in a stick. You're not hand seeding a 100-foot bed, let alone a 50-foot bed, let alone a 25-foot bed, 10 rows, forget
Mhm.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's gardener scale.
Mhm.
That's absolutely required.
But I would say, I mean, I know talking with me and talking with some other growers, especially kind of some of the guys coming up now. I think a lot of us started that way. Whether it's because we were just bootstrapping the operation or we were intimidated by this big fancy new expensive tool or whatever. I am forever surprised at how many people start out just like making a furrow and just dropping seeds in the ground, or they, for something denser, maybe they sort of like broadcast on a bed or whatever. But yeah, you sort of launched with the paper pot, and the Jang came pretty soon after that, correct?
Yeah, I don't remember when that was, but I'll say within the first year.
Yeah.
The Jang is, for people that aren't aware, there's one company that brings the Jang into the US from Korea. and then everybody else is reselling it through that company.
Mm.
So there's no unique product differentiation with the Jang. It's all made by, I think it's Jang Automation is their name, at least maybe the US translation. So there's a lot of sources to get that, but that's at the time Curtis had talked about the Jang a lot on the Urban Farmer, and I know from directly communicating with Jang, that definitely moved a lot of Jang
Mm.
sales in a direction that they were happy with. So I think we played an indirect way in increasing the popularity of that tool, regardless of who sold the tool.
Yeah. But I will say, even though, yeah, you can find them a lot of other places, one of the things that I really like about kind of the way that you guys present it, um, on Modern Grower is having that, I think you call it like the Josh Satin kit or whatever, where it has like just the basic rollers that you need. Because I've seen the list. I have a copy of it that I got from the other farm from Jang of like the big spreadsheet that shows like every crop and every roller that you need. Some of them I didn't even know existed. And so to be able to like buy the package with the kickstand and everything in those like four rollers that you need really made, as someone who's completely new to it and frankly was still new to growing, didn't have a whole lot of experience like direct seeding beets and things like that. So to be able to kind of know like, all right, this is the roller that I need, or these are the four that I need, and everything like that, like it really made made my life 1,000 times easier at being kind of a newbie to the world of kind of stepping up from Home Depot level tools, things that I've just acquired over time, and really kind of transitioning into kind of what I would call like the pro farm tool game.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. That's really what I've tried to do at the end of the day, right? I'm not a farmer. I don't have a farm. And some people definitely hold that against me. Like, "Hey, where's your farm?" when you talk about other stuff. But I've talked to enough people now and done this long enough that I'm intimately familiar with what's going on. And I've also run my own business for a long time while managing a family and like finances being fairly tight. That I look I have the mindset of an entrepreneur, and regardless of whether it's another business owner like me or a farmer, I get what they're going through. So I understand the importance of simplifications and systems, and I try and find solutions that are proven to work, whether we create it or somebody else creates it, and offer that to people in a way that makes things easy to adopt. Um, I don't think there's a lot of directions you can go in a tool company, from making new stuff and innovating to just saying, "Hey, a lot of this stuff's been solved. Just
Mhm.
present it in a clean way, offer good customer service, offer fair pricing," and that carries itself. So that's what we've tried to do. That's what I've tried to focus on, because I think that's my sweet spot in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think it really has changed the game a lot because I would say around the time that kind of paper pot sort of took off, um, there wasn't really a lot of, at least from my experience, there wasn't a ton of like tool companies. You had some that were selling stuff, but I feel like most folks were buying stuff through like Johnny's, a seed company that also started selling tools, and, High Mowing and Fedco and like everybody else, they sort of had it as like an add on. Like, here's some things that you can do that will make your business more efficient, make it a little bit more profitable. But now we've sort of stepped into a world, and honestly, for a new farmer, it can be extremely overwhelming of, it's like, all right, so there's these 5 or 6 companies that everybody talks about, and, it's not the one-stop shop where I can get my seeds and my row cover and my seeders and all this. It's like, all right, so this person has that and that person has that. I think, once again, another really beneficial thing that I love about the work that I've been able to do with you guys has been, you have sort of the educational component along with it. Listening to episode you did with Jody this week, about the Sumi sucker, which we'll get into later. But it's like, I mean, you had a whole episode dedicated to how to use it properly, from not just you who runs the business and is incentivized to be able to, move units, but from someone who uses it day in and day out, and so it sort of takes a lot of the monumental task of deciding, like, all right, here's these six seaters, which one do I choose from? Or here's these, five different brands of row cover, which one do I use? Like, you're also able to provide like hands-on experience, or I guess secondhand hands-on experience of, let's demystify this. Let's exactly explain why we use it this way instead of just like buy this $700 tool and hope it works good for you.
Yeah, this is one takeaway that I pulled out of that first finance company that I worked for. The person who owned the company stressed, give people branded conclusions. You're not,
Hmm, interesting.
don't give people choice. People don't want choice. We might think people want all these choices, but they don't. And I think Johnny's is a great company, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of choices when you look at stuff from, and I get why they have it, but like you go to tomatoes, there might be 40 tomatoes. That can easily overwhelm people. Now, you might be one person who needs a very specific tomato for a specific situation. I'm in the Northeast growing in a high tunnel. I need this type of determinant,
Yeah.
right? But that's a small swath of the buyers. 80% of the people are just like, what's the best tomato? And I think that's the same as market farmers listening to this. Why have a bundle of kale, a bundle of Swiss chard, a bundle of lettuce, and a bundle of tatsoi? A lot of people are just like, I just want the lettuce. I know what that is.
Hmm.
Versus, or you just put it in a mix. Here's salad mix. There might be radish microgreens in it, there might be tatsoi in it, there might be mizuna in it, there might be whatever in it. It's just salad mix. Here, we made the choice for you there. Or you go to like a sushi restaurant that's nice and it's just, I'll get the chef will make whatever
Hmm.
type thing. So that's where I've tried to go is refine down solutions so there isn't as much choice because new people already, if you're starting a business, you have enough to worry about. I don't need to give you the JP1, the JP2, the JP3, the JP5, the JP6, narrow and wide to think about. And then you're like, well, there's 7 seaters here. Which one should I get?
Yeah.
Why should anybody have to waste mental bandwidth for that? Let alone at different stages of a business, there's probably appropriate solutions. And later, when you get more experience, that's when you can nuance out and make more advanced solutions because you also have more time and context of why you need a specific solution. At the beginning, it's like, I want something that's reliable and works. I'm just starting. What's the best choice? Here it is. There's one choice. Take it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's something that has been extremely beneficial for me is because, these tools are like a big investment. None of it is particularly cheap, both in the quality, but then also in the price, which I know for a lot of new growers it can be a little bit of sticker shock. Whether you're looking at like a hybrid greenhouse tomato, you're like, man, this pack of 250 seeds is like $70. Like, oh my God. Or if it's, a JP1 or it's, a big long roll of row cover, whatever it may be, it can be a big bit of a sticker shock and you're like, "Oh my god, I only have so much money to spend," or, "Do I need to be spending more money?" And so being able to have sort of a refined list of like, here's our tried and true, this is what we know works, this is what we know farmers are using, it really makes both the decision making side of it, but also the shopping experience, the investment side of it, extremely simplified. You're like, all right, this is the one option. This is what we're going to go with. Here's the four rollers that you need. We're not going to bother you trying to sell you a pack of, 15 rollers that'll do everything because more than likely everything that you're going to do as a market farmer is going to be with these four. And so that's a great thing.
This brings something up. I'm going to say this with a lot of love to your half of the market farming community, the farmer side, and I'll speak on behalf of the supplier side, whether it's seeds, soils, tools, greenhouses, you name it. This is always this beautiful irony that I always see. Farmers expect to go to a farmer's market and sell their product for
Mhm.
premium prices that are some multiple of prices at a grocery store. Don't go to Walmart. Those tomatoes are garbage.
Yeah.
They're $1 a piece. Mine are 2.50 a piece. They taste so much better. So market gardeners expect the public to pay a premium. Yet market gardeners want to pay below market for the stuff that they buy. So they want to
Yeah,
win on
yeah,
both
yeah.
sides. We want to get our costs as low as we can,
Mhm.
yet we want to sell stuff for as much as we can. And all our side of the community is doing, we're not gouging to gouge. We're not flying around in helicopters over your farms laughing or driving by in our Lambos laughing as you're out in the fields. We have to cover the same costs as farmers do. Labor, insurance, raw materials, inventory costs, marketing costs. How long does it take to sell through? There's R&D costs, all this other stuff. Shipping, that we have to price it at what we think is a fair price so we can make money on this sale and continue the ongoing vitality of our company into the future, which means we got to make a profit,
Mhm.
which, oh, you want to make a profit? Well, you want to buy my tool and use my tool to make a profit too. So
Yeah.
that's always the thing people like to bring up, like, oh, that much for that. One, people don't understand the cost of what it actually makes it costs
Oh,
to make that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Just
for
like your
sure.
customers have no idea why a salad mix is $12 a pound. Well, yeah, shouldn't it just show up? It grows by nature from the sun, right? You just drop the seed and, like, pick it. You didn't do
Yeah.
anything.
Mhm.
And it's like we both know that's not the story on how to get good lettuce to the market. And tools don't just show up from Santa Claus either. There is no Will Ferrell, Buddy the Elf that just makes this stuff for free for, candy canes and candy corns and syrups.
Mhm.
So, like, there's costs, right? But that is the irony I see a lot in the space. So
Yeah.
that's just me venting and ranting a little bit on behalf of all the tool companies.
No, I appreciate that. We'll make sure that we snip that out. We'll blast it all over Instagram. We'll tag everybody in it. And I think another thing to mention as well is that, a large majority, maybe not a majority, but a large percentage of the tools that we're using as market farmers are imported. They're coming from Japan, they're coming from Korea, you know, Glazer hose are made in Switzerland, all of these sort of things, that it's like there's a whole nother aspect of it. These aren't tools that are, just thrown together in some factory in Ohio or whatever. And so, or you're having to import these from another country where they have like over years and years and years of small scale farming, they've been able to kind of have these really perfect refined designs. And then now we have the ability all these years later to and sort of just like jump in and take advantage of all their amazing design. And so I feel like, at least with me, sometimes I neglect to remember that. It's like, all right, this one's from Japan, these 2 are from Korea, that one's from Germany or whatever, and so, like, we're sort of sourcing from all over the globe the best technology and the best design so that we can be as profitable as we wanna be.
And people want it made in I think people want it made in the US. But trust me, I've sourced stuff from everywhere.
Mhm.
To make certain things in the US, I'm not sure US buyers will
Yeah.
their wallet backs up their desire to buy it made in the US. There's a lot of products that say they're made in the US, but they're often made with imported components, or there's some degree of, like, touching it a little bit, and now it's made in the US. The bottom line is steel and things like that are expensive here.
Mhm.
Labor is expensive here. The minimum wage in California is 20 bucks, just under 20 bucks. To pay for that into the cost of a tool can be extremely expensive. And so this is the other part, and this isn't a farm thing. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. We want cheaper prices when we buy stuff on Amazon or whatever. And the trade-off cost to that is often less quality, outsourcing the labor, maybe, because I don't want to blanket this, maybe supporting unfair labor practices, but we want cheap. And a
Mhm.
lot of times it's, hey, it might be like the cost of meat, right? I want chicken, but I'm not the one killing the chicken, so I don't really care about the chicken.
Yeah.
We look past those other things. So the why don't you make more in the US type thing is I think maybe what a lot of companies would say, hey, it's imported, it's expensive. And also some of these things like the paper chain pot, the machine to make that's a few $1,000,000. The Sumi soaker, it's been made by Sumitomo, who's a multi-billion dollar company. Like the machine to make that piping, I'm not starting that up with the money in my bank account,
Yeah.
right? Like let alone I can't even buy a building big enough to put that line in.
Mhm.
So you just have to at some point use the global collective knowledge and manufacturing capacity to better a space and let people like us or Johnny's sort out the logistics part of it and try and get it to you as cheaply as possible. Because I mean, at the end of the day, what does it really matter if I get it from Japan or from Idaho? It's still supporting a US business as the end user. The food's going to a US consumer. I get it's not perfect, but do you just not import?
Mhm.
Uh, These are just concerns, I've seen over the years.
Yeah, and as a farmer who has, at times, taken the sort of the cheaper route, the faster route, and be like, "You know what? I can find something that's an equivalent or seemingly an equivalent on Amazon," and bought stuff. Like, I'm working with I've worked with the really nice Toro, drip line or drip tape versus, some, like, unbranded whatever drip tape that I bought on Amazon just to kinda try it and see, and, at the end of the day, the price wasn't really that much different, but the level of quality was, you know I mean, there's no comparing the one bought from Amazon, which was probably, shipped directly from somewhere overseas and, bypassed all of the necessary imports and tariffs and whatever to get to me, versus the one that is extremely high quality and probably costs more. And I say that's another really good thing that I like about sort of the refined option, the refined menu, so to speak, of tools, and sort of soft goods is that, like, I know that I'm gonna get good quality. There's no question on, like, is this bag of connectors gonna be half broken or the bag's ripped open or they said there was 50 and there's only 47 of them, so on and so forth. And so that's one thing that I really appreciate is just that, like, I know, like, you're not shipping out shit. Like, it's good quality every single time.
Usually, you get what you pay for in most
Absolutely.
things in life, and you can which is fine for some things. I need to do a minor repair on something. I need some weird tool. I go to Harbor Freight. I get the tool because I'm gonna use it once ever.
Mhm.
I get it. But I try and I was talking to my daughters about this lesson. It's like, if you're a mechanic and you use a certain tool every day, then maybe you think about buying the best one possible because maybe it's more accurate, maybe it's more durable, it's safer, it's comfortable, it's lighter, whatever it is. But if you're barely using it, then fine. Yeah, like if you don't need the paper pot transplanter, you use it once a week on your farm, well then maybe find a way not to use it. Like
Mhm.
it's not worth the investment. But if you're doing massive amounts of transplanting and you're a salad farm or something like that, and you're transplanting 5 to 10 beds a week, that's a different context. And yeah, you don't want to be replacing stuff. A lot of people want to say, "Oh, I'll make it or I'll DIY this."
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's fine there, but then there's still cost, right? That's just in your time and you can make anything, right? But is your time better spent making that thing or doing what your business is actually set out to do?
Yeah, and, man, your comment about we expect our customers to pay a premium because we know what goes into it and we know the quality that we're delivering at market. Um, therefore we should expect the same from the tools that we're buying. Like that's just still like swirling around in my head. I really think, just to nail that home, like I really think that's something that especially us rookies can keep in mind. I think some of the guys who've been doing it for a long time, like they've probably bought the bad tools and broken them and bought them again and broke them again and then finally broke down and got something good. But for those of us that are new in this, I think that's a really valuable lesson, that it's like if you expect your customers to understand the quality of what you're delivering, then you should also understand and expect that same quality in what you're purchasing. And then it's like, and then if you can ensure quality all the way down the line, from the land that you buy, the inputs that you put into the land, the seed that you're bringing in. I had a similar conversation with Michelle from High Mowing, where she talked about that, like the importance of really good seed quality for germination and consistency. It's like if you can ensure quality from the moment that you set foot on a piece of property, everything that you buy and bring in, to then everything that goes out, whether that's like the containers that you send it out in, the condition that you send it out in, your display, the way that you educate your customers what to do with it once they get home, like ensuring quality through the entire supply chain. I think yes, it may cost more in the long run, but it ensures like higher quality and better satisfaction from start to finish, and you'll have more consistency for a longer period of time.
For sure. Yeah, it's all gotta match too. You can't if you're at a market, you can't sell good quality produce and have a bad looking booth and you look dirty or not be conversational, right? It's all gotta fit together. And if somebody asks, "Well, what's going on here?" You need to you need to believe it enough and embrace it enough where you're like, "Hey, this is what we do. We make the best stuff. We grow the best tomatoes around, and we charge, what we need to charge."
Mhm.
Don't like it, like, move on, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like then they're probably not for you, and there'll be another one. The next person will probably be a better customer.
I spend a lot of time in spreadsheets looking at if we launch something new, or even when we look to change pricing, if UPS raises rates or that type of thing, looking at what do I have to charge? Like, where do I need to be? 100% I'm not sitting there like laughing, like, oh, I'll just crank this up so I can boost my margin. I'm often on the side of I probably, if I had a business analyst say, like, "Some of your margins are too low. You should be pushing this." But I it's like, well, where do I think I can be? Because I'm really trying to make stuff as affordable as I can. So that's a parameter in my head. It's like I want people to be able to buy this. I don't wanna price people out. But part of that is because obviously I wanna sell it, but I
Mhm.
also don't want other people I'm not an extort like, I'm not trying to extort people for what I'm getting.
Yeah.
It's reasonable. So there's thought that goes into this. This isn't just, "Here's I wanna make, X points of margin, plug that into a spreadsheet, that's what we charge." It's like, let's really look at these numbers. How low can we get it? Are we comfortable here? What's the volume on it? That type of thing. So try and do the best I can for everybody.
Yeah. So I would say, I kind of have like a quick list of three things or two things that I would say, and then one that I believe will be a game changer. But I kind of have a list of things that I think that like modern growers brought to the table that have sort of like opened up a door to a lot more efficiency. Like one being the paper pot, sort of really kind of taking it mainstream, so to speak. And then I'd say the next one is with the quick hoops. Like although the quick hoops aren't the only ones out there, those are the first ones that I ever saw. Like way before we interacted, way before we did any of the stuff, it was like, oh, this is once again, this is another game changer. Like I don't have to use flimsy metal hoops and sandbags everywhere. Like I can just set these up and go. It's really nice. How have you been able to sort of, I guess, stay on the cutting edge, so to speak, and kind of be the first one to market with sort of a new product in the US or in North America for market farmers?
Maybe it's luck, maybe it's art, maybe there's some skill there. Like, I'm always looking, always.
Mhm.
It's what I do, and so I'm thinking about this stuff all the time, seeing what's out there. I obviously have a lot of connections. I hear stuff from people, and I'm trying to just keep the radar on. And when I see stuff, I can kind of tell yes or no. And when I see something that looks like a yes plus, then I jump on it
Mhm.
and see what we can do, run the numbers, run the logistics. Like the quick hoops were challenging in the sense they're not the easiest thing to ship. That's the biggest downside of them. They're probably not the easiest thing to store for a lot of farms either. If they're not easy for us to ship, they're probably not easy to store just because they don't break down.
Yeah.
So that was like the big challenge there. But that I spent probably a year making that happen, doing research, trying it, testing stuff, talking to the company, talking to at the time, like Jody, they weren't really in the US, so they weren't in the
Mhm.
US. So talking to Jody and other growers and getting feedback and thinking, how does this fit into the landscape? Because I'm trying not to add stuff that is just like a meh product. I really think it's got to be stuff that farms in the right situation, it can benefit their production. I don't want to sell somebody a shovel or a rake.
Yeah.
You can get that anywhere. There's no differentiation there. What's the point? It's like, what can we do that has a unique solution? So that's really what I'm doing, trying to just be aware and then constantly say, is this appeal to enough people? Is it enough of a leverage point for somebody? And does the economics work to make it a go? And there's been a lot of stuff that looks cool. I can't tell you how many people brought stuff to my attention, like, and I've thought like it's awesome. In my
Mhm.
early days, I would have just probably pulled the trigger a lot quicker. But then it's like, yeah, this is cool, but out of 100 market farms, 5 are going to want this. Forget it. I need 25 at least to want it, a
Yeah.
quarter of the people to want or half.
And
Otherwise, it's not worth the time.
yeah. So we've got Paper Pot, we've got Quick Hoops, and the one that I'm feeling hopeful about is the new Sumi Soaker, which just kind of timing of when we're recording this, you just launched that. It's now available on the website. You just released an interview with Jody Roebuck on Farm Small, Farm Smart, sort of breaking it down. Can you give us just a quick, if anyone hasn't listened to that or they're not or they haven't seen the product, can you kind of give us a quick rundown of what the Sumi Soaker is?
Sure. Yeah. And it's February 2025 when we're recording this, if you want to dig into that. So, this is another greatest hit from Japan.
Mhm.
We didn't invent it. It's been in use in Japan for 30 plus years. It's run by a huge company, Sumika Agrotech, who's a division of Sumitomo. And they've used it in Japan extensively, 30 years across a variety of industries to water large scale landscapes. They've exported around the world. They've never really done anything in the US for whatever reason. So Jody started using this, I think like 10 years ago in
Wow.
New Zealand. And he got me turned on to it. And I started talking to the company. This is known, it's probably a year and a half in the making. So this is like sometimes how long this stuff takes to actually go, but by the time you do the calls, meet with the company, R&D, all that type of stuff. And we met with them, we tried it, had farmers tried it, had good results, the economics checked, irrigation obviously a major part of a lot of farms, so there's market appeal there, and it comes in costing a lot less than a lot of other systems. The great thing about this Sumi soaker is what it is. It's just a long hose that's perforated that when you pressurize it, it puts out a sprinkler pattern to the left of the hose and to the right of the hose. But this isn't some little garden thing. You're 15 feet in either direction, and you can run this up to 300 feet long. So you can run a 300-foot hose, 15 feet on either side, and water a rectangle.
Yeah.
And watering a rectangle is impossible with overhead rotating sprinklers because rotating sprinklers put out a circular pattern.
Mhm.
This puts out a wec- rectangular pattern. So you're not going to get wet spots where patterns overlap in round sprays, or you're not going to get dry spots. It's simple. It's low tech. There's no moving parts. It's just a perforated hose. You can move it around. Some of the farmers that we've had test this over the last year and a half have a couple, just move it around as needed. Use it to water in seedlings after transplanting. Use it to water in crops because it puts down a really gentle, fine mist. Um, so I look at it as either something you could use at that phase or in conjunction with wobblers or in conjunction with drip. You want to get something established, you could use this. There's obviously not all benefits to it. There are some negatives to it. High winds, the mist pattern is so fine, it will blow if you have a lot of wind. You can get some of that with wobblers too.
Mhm.
And things like since it's a ground-based system, if you have tall crops on either side, that will obstruct the pattern as water comes out of it. But they sell risers for that, or some people even put it up on make their own things out of wood just to lift the hose up off the ground. So when I saw this and started looking at it, I'm like, okay, this can solve a lot of problems for people because it's affordable relative to the other options out there. Cheaper than drip, cheaper than wobbler systems. It's simple. Like you're just making one hose connection, unrolling a tube. There's no moving parts, so minimal maintenance. Move it around. If you need to store it, you just roll the hose up. It rolls up flat. So 100 feet takes up something. I don't know if I said it, the diameter of a CD. I don't even know if people would
Wow.
know what that means anymore.
Yeah.
But really small, um, 5, 6 inches across. So you're not storing all this crazy equipment, and you could just. Some people are running off a garden hose,
Mhm.
runs off low pressure, 30 psi max. I don't know what the lower end is off the top of my head, but maybe 10. Everybody should have at least that pressure. Um, but I think it'll solve issues for people that have watering. We've heard a lot of complaints from new farmers, particularly there's one near me. One of their big struggles is wet spots and dry spots on their farm. They cannot get it evenly watered with wobblers because of that circular pattern. Well, you can put down a rectangle and now you know that every section is getting uniform water. So you're not going to have bigger growth in certain areas, smaller growth in other areas. What does this look like in terms of on a field? One line, 4 beds on either side, assuming you have around 18-inch pathways. So you're
Mhm.
covering 8 beds in
Yeah.
one section, and that's about $120 to do that. A wobbler system to cover those same 8 beds, or some of the other systems out there, depending on where you get it, maybe like 225, 250.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems extremely affordable, um, which is yeah, I mean, that was, like, a big draw, like, "Oh my gosh," like, I can't believe like with everything we've just talked about, how it's like, you need to commit to being able to, like, pay for quality, and, like, this seems to be like, "Oh, this is, like, really good quality as well as it's a good affordable price," just because it's so, like, seemingly low tech, yet so well engineered. 2 biggest issues that I have when it comes to watering, when I'm watering in a directly seeded crop, I've opted for kinda like half-inch black pipe with little emitters that I pop into the bed, and I can water just 1 bed at a time, which is really great because I can keep it super localized, but it's circular emitters, and so, yeah, you have dry spots and wet spots, and then, if you wanna get the wet spots sufficiently saturated, then you're oversaturating other spots, your pathways are getting all muddy and flooded, and then, yeah, and then you have 100-foot long piece of pipe with all these emitters, those emitters get clogged, they break, you have to replace them all the time, it's a real headache, and then also, summertime, we're trying to do a lot of baby greens, lettuces. You need to be getting water onto the plants to keep them cooled down. And we opted to just try like T-post with big, I don't know what they're called, but kind of the traditional sprinklers,
Like an impact sprinkler.
impact sprinkler, yeah. And basically just have those at like quadrants to where you can kind of water, but same thing. It's not a full circle, but it's still a semicircle. So you're having to do that. So then you're oversaturating some areas and certain areas are not. And so I'm really eager to order one and and try it out and I hope that it'll work really well. And I love how modular it is. So,
Yeah, it's one of those things too. It looks super simple. People are gonna be like, "What? It's a tube with holes in it." But
mhm,
like everything, it's not that simple.
yeah.
It's massive amount of engineering, like special machines to laser cut those holes at the right position to make sure that the water comes out cleanly. The way the plastic's bonded together because it's two layers. There's a lot that goes on there that if you just look at it, you're like, "What is this?
Mhm,
This is worth nothing." And I can already hear people say that, but they have no idea how it's made and what it
mhm.
takes to get it, into production. So,
Yeah,
that's just another side that people don't see.
and a similar example would be like seating trays. There's 1,000 different seating trays out there. Some of them are astronomical. I was looking at some today, and it was like jaw hit the floor. It's like, surely this is like a pack of 10. And it's like, oh no, this is for a single tray. All the way down to super cheap ones. And to the untrained eye, you'd be like, yeah, it's a 128 cell tray. Like, what's the difference? It holds soil, puts and it's like, no, I could talk to you for hours about the difference and why I like the ones that I like. And so I think this will probably be no different. Like the people who use it and they can see how it can change the thing on the farm will probably be able to explain the difference in a much better way. To sort of wrap things up here, a fun question that I have for you, and I'll probably pose this in a different way to upcoming guests, but and you can answer one or two of these questions. It's either who is on your farm Mount Rushmore, whether it's like other growers or people kind of who have really affected this industry, or what is your farm tool Mountain Rushmore?
I'll try and take both on.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do the farmer, and this is gonna be kinda bad because 'cause I'm sure I'm leaving a lot of people off, and that's not intentional.
There's
I'm
been
gonna purpose
47 presidents and there's only 4 of them on Mount Rushmore, so you're gonna leave somebody out.
just to make it more interesting, I'm gonna leave off some obvious people, okay, that
Okay.
we would all probably stick on there. So I'll say one is Jeremy Mueller, who's
Mm,
farming at Common Grounds Farm in the Northwest. I think he's done some really interesting, amazing things with growing salad mix. I believe his farm now only grows salad mix or predominantly salad mix. He's somebody that I remember hearing his interview with Chris Blanchard on Farmer to Farmer 2017, 2018, like just starting out. I think they were just having a baby, but like super green. And he's just an innovator
mm,
and a tinkerer, and I love the way he approaches things. I will give him credit for really innovating the concept of the JP5. So anybody using the JP5 should thank Jeremy Mueller for the work that he kind of did tinkering with that and kind of prototyping some stuff and making that possible because it all started really in his head. I will say Josh Volk because I think he's done a lot to communicate to people about tools, the DIY tools you can make, small scale models. I think he's just a champion for small scale farming
mhm,
who's done his part to produce the food, but also to really pull people up in the next generation and educate people. I'll put Jenny Quiner on there for the fact that she started urban farming off the Curtis Stone model and really blew that up into an on-farm store that took off in a small town in Iowa, maybe not so small town in Iowa city, and went on to do value add things like salad dressing that have regional distribution. So I think that's an amazing inspirational story. She's trained a lot of farmers. Her, Brian Burns at Bear Creek in Michigan.
mhm, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And because again, somebody who's a very forward thinker, innovative with what he's done with salad greens, transitioning his farm during COVID to have an on-farm store and aggregate. I think he's done a lot of cool things. I know that's four, but I mean Eric Schultz for the systemization he's done with things and really trying to simplify farming. He's been a mentor and consultant to so many people. He's done a ton with bridging the gap between small scale farming and housing development, bringing kind of agritourism in there. Ben Hartman for obvious reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Like I really admire people who expand the knowledge
Mhm.
of the space, either by forward thinking, by innovating, or by expanding the number of people who know this knowledge. So it could just be teaching people. So you can expand the knowledge laterally amongst more people, or we can just expand the breadth of the knowledge by doing new things. But those are just some ones that come to immediate mind because of what they've done, and there's so many more. And again, I left off the obvious ones on purpose.
It's your deep cut Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, yeah, that's the deep cut one, the ones you wouldn't think of, the B side of the track, right?
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
For tools, I'm gonna say for a new farmer, I'll limit this to that cat tunnel
Mm.
because I think it does so much for your farm
Oh, man.
year round.
Mhm.
For the cost to rate of return trade off, I'll say the Jang because I think it's just you can't farm without it. It's
Yeah.
extremely accurate, extremely precise. I'll say the Coolbot
Mm.
because I think
Yeah,
it
that's a good one.
for the cost advantage you get. I think wash pack storage section of farming is it's one of those things that it's like a 10 out of 10 important, but people starting a farm think about it 2 out of 10% of the time
Mhm.
and don't give it as much love and credit and thought and foresight as they should. And the cool bot specifically because you can instead of having to buy a walk-in, I can make a walk-in. I can take something that normally would be very expensive and make it cheaper. You're most likely at a certain scale going to need long-term storage of crop or not long-term, but larger volume storage than you can get out of just small fridges, which you know all too well.
Yeah.
Um, those let's say those 3. You know, there's probably a lot of other good ones that could be in there, but I'll put those 3 at the top.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, those are great. I mean, I think those are all having 2 out of the 3 and in the process currently of doing the build out for number 3, getting our cold room going. Yeah, I mean, I can't it's one of those things. Sometimes you don't realize the value of a tool until you realize you need it and you don't have it. Like you said, using refrigerators, we're like, well, can I leave the carrots out? It's going to be 50 degrees tonight. Will those be fine until market tomorrow? Yeah, the cool bot is definitely one that I think, and it's extremely modular. I've seen guys throw them on an inverter and cool like a
Yeah.
foamed in van and make like a mobile cooler or delivery van. Yeah, there's a lot, and I agree on the cat tunnel. For the cost per square foot, I think it's Arnois. They're supposed to be releasing a new one this year that's supposed to be like even cheaper per square foot. And so, yeah, I think that's a great one. And then obviously the Jang. We could
And
we could
trying to
do a
think of
whole
another
episode
one.
on the Jang.
Are we missing any? I mean, obviously high tunnels, but that's a higher price point, and that's just a bigger cat tunnel with extra features. But is there anything else like here that is really a must that we're leaving out?
I mean, I would, and I was just personally, I would say like a doesn't have to be a glazer, but I would say like a glazer, 5-inch stirrup hoe. I mean, that's the tool that gets used more than any tool on my farm. And,
Okay.
and so from my perspective,
And for
I
you,
would
like
say that.
for having a Glazer stirrup hoe versus like a Home Depot stirrup hoe,
Oh
there's a
my
difference.
god. Oh yeah. And that's between a glazer and other ones from other companies that are roughly about the same price. It's still hands down, I've had some that were good and they're broken now and the glazers and they just last forever, where
Yeah.
you have to replace the blade before you ever have to replace the actual head itself. So yeah, I would but yeah, that's a great list. I really like that.
I mean, other things I'd put on there, these are generic though, like irrigation as a category, right?
Yeah.
Fencing as a category, wash pack. Like I'm a huge believer in like having a good wash pack setup, but that's not a specific tool. Those are
Mhm.
more groupings. All the other tools, the paper pot, a tilther, BCS, a flame weeder, a quick cut greens harvester. Like that's all stuff I think you could do without. I don't think
I think those are those are the things that you do to take your farm to the next level. They're
Yeah.
not the necessity you need to have them, which I guess, how do you define what your Mount Rushmore is? But yeah, if you're talking like the things you can't live without, you could, I mean, depending on your operation, you could figure out how to work without a BCS or without a flame weeder. I would say for most farms, depending on the climate that you live in, if you're going to be doing anything like 4 season farming at all, having row cover, frost protection has been awesome. Which I've enjoyed using the frost fighter that I got from you guys. It's been really good, and it's really versatile too because I'll be able to use it for insect protection, and then also getting some stuff established a little sooner once the weather warms up. So I would say a close five would probably be, yeah, like some sort of row cover season extension.
The great thing about that is it's versatile. Like you said, you can use it if it's a lighter weight, you can use it for insect, but you can also layer it up to get
Hmm.
higher insulated value. It'd be an interesting
Yeah.
episode. You're dropped off on an abandoned market farm on an
Mm,
island in Michigan. You need to start a farm. You're only allowed to bring 5 tools. What are you bringing?
yeah. I say we pitch that as a TV show. I think that
Yeah,
sounds
right?
like a
That
fun
would be.
idea. Yeah.
Recruit market gardeners. Everybody gets a plot. Everybody gets
Oh,
5 different
yeah.
tools or whatever you wanna bring, and who
Hmm.
can grow the most stuff.
And then you do your like farmers market at the end of the episode for, your for the elimination aspect of it. You've been
Right.
voted out of the market.
Most
Um,
sales, best
yeah.
quality crop, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Well, Diego, thank you so much for sitting down. And for everybody listening at home, and I always kind of end each episode saying this, but, thank you so much. None of this podcast or anything this would be possible if it wasn't for you making this possible, supporting us in what we're doing, and just kind of being a wealth of knowledge that we can all take from, including myself. And so, thank you for all that you've done with the podcast, with Modern Grower, and everything that we will do in the future.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Huge thanks to Diego for sitting down and talking with me. I feel like I'm sort of mixing my little end of interview banter with my end of podcast thank yous. But either way, huge thank you to Diego for sitting down, talking with me about tools, talking with me about the importance of investing in the things that we use on our farm, talking about farm finance, and a little bit of the history of both permaculture voices and Woodstock and his own life. Yeah. And thank you to everyone at Modern Grower for making this podcast possible. If you want to check out all of the amazing tools that Diego and I just talked about, like the Sumi soaker or the paper pot transplanter that started it all, the Jank seeder, quick hoops, quick plant fabric, all of the different things that we have, there is so much amazing stuff. Go over to shop.moderngrower.co and pick up the tools and the goods that you need for your farm. And please, if you liked hearing the sultry sounds of Diego Footer's voice, go check out all his other podcasts like Farm Small, Farm Smart, Carrot Cash Flow, and all the other shows over there. And go check out the YouTube channel as well. There's lots of really good content. Just a reminder, this is a value for value podcast, which means that we believe that when we give you value in the form of this content, that you will extend that value back our way by kicking us a little bit of money to help make this show possible. We never want to put this behind a paywall. We never want to make this freemium content or Modern Grower Plus or whatever it may be. We want to ensure that all this content can go to you free of charge. And so if this is giving you value, please consider kicking some of that value back our way. You can do $1, $5, $50, $100, whatever you would like to do, and whatever sort of frequency that you would like to do it, even if it's just one time. It all helps make this show possible and keep us on the air and on the internet. So please go to Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. You can look for at Crop Culture Farm and shoot us a few bucks. Thank you so much. It is always appreciated. And once again, you have been listening to the Rookie Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Alec. And until next time, peace.